So in this second part, we're going to have a look at using some of the tools that come with the default Linux build. What I've got here is I've just remoted into the Linux box via No Machine. And what you can see here is when you log in, you will always be presented with this new launcher app that I've written. So at the moment, there's no favorites. We've got all our sort of classics tools here. So for example, we can just right mouse click and add that to the favorites, and you'll see that it's there on the favorites again. So it's split into the core DCC tools that you can see there, all the Mayas, the Houdinis, Unreal Engine and stuff. We've got developers tools, so some of the IDEs that you may wish to use, Warp Terminal, which I'm going to open up in a minute and use, some large language model, LM Studio stuff, and so on, and some of the tools that I've written, in particular VM Cleaner, which we'll look at, and a whole pile of other DCC tools, all of your Office tools, and this batch called installers. And the installers are important. These are little scripts that need to be run only once, but the first time you log in to the machine, this is going to install things to do with the shells and things that we're using. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to the developers tool and open up this thing called Warp. So Warp is a terminal. You can still use the standard GNOME's terminal. The Warp terminal is a little bit more modern in the way it works, and it's got some nice completions. It also has the ability to add in LLMs and other sort of helpers and things like that. Still got all the usual tabs and everything else. And what you'll notice at the moment is the prompt and everything else is not sort of set up particularly well. We've got the username, the machine we're on, and a little prompt. But what we can do is we can add a series of more useful setups to this. We are using, instead of Bash, which is the shell we've been using for a number of years, we're now using a shell called Zscaler. This is the default shell on Macs now, and it's equivalent to using Bash, but it's got lots of extra features, and we can leverage these features into sort of making things easier. In particular, it's got far better history. It remembers folders that you were in. It remembers commands in context. So for example, if I start writing something like that, at the moment it can't remember anything because I've completely deleted my history. But eventually when we install it and start working, as you'll see, history will be contextual to what we're doing. So it makes life a lot easier using the shells. So the first thing we need to do to add all of these really useful features is we need to run the installer, and we need to run this one, which is the OhmyZShell extension. So by clicking on this, what it's going to do is it's going to go and download the shell. It's going to copy some default configurations, and it's going to set up a few elements, including tools like direnv and everything else, to make our life easier. Once I've closed that, if I now basically open a new shell, it looks no different to start with. But if I were to, for example, change into a folder now, there's a GitHub repo, as you can see there. It tells you immediately what branch we're on. It tells you information about that and everything else. You'll also notice it gives you the ability to click on things to open links. If we want to copy a path, we can copy a path. So we've got all of this sort of contextual help and things like that in the terminal, which will make our life easier. So this only needs to be done once. Again, I will be doing this as part of the lab intro. I will fire this up with the students and say, install OMZ. I'd also get them to install Z. So again, if you click on this, it'll install the Z editor. You'll notice that it's already installed on my machine, so I don't need to, but that will download and install the Z editor, which we'll be looking at soon as well. Now, once this is done, as I say, you only need to do it once. It's all automated, ready for the students to use, and it introduces a few different things. In particular, what it's going to do is it's going to set up a tool called direnv. It will set up OhmyZShell. There's lots of customizations that the user can add themselves. All of this lives in a folder called ZShellRC. Now, if I just go back to my slides, so you can see here, if you're used to using Bash, then this will seem incredibly familiar. In fact, any scripts that run in Bash will also run in this. So you won't have any trouble if you're using shells already. The reason I've added this, it's got better auto completion of paths and things like that. It does command correction, so you can sort of go through, if you're using a machine and you type something wrong like LA, it just goes, oh, did you mean LS? So things like that is quite sort of good at doing. It doesn't do it with that one, but there are certain things that it will try and correct for you and do it. So that can be quite useful. It's also got plugins, so for things like Git, virtualenv, direnv, which I'm going to again use to our advantage when we're using the tools. Path expansion, better history, and command search. So in general, it just works very well. As we say, it can be installed by apps here, as I've just demonstrated. What this is going to do is it's going to add this zsharc file to your home directory. So this basically is my version that I use on all my machines. So you can see there's a few aliases in there. It's setting up the default themes and elements like that. But in particular, what it's doing is setting up a few elements to do with direnv. So setting up direnv hooks so that when you're using, a bit larger, so better than there. So when you're using direnv, it basically allows you to change into a folder and read a direnv folder and set up new functions and things like that. It has completions for UV, which are the tools we're going to use. It has the prompt here, which is just set up. You can go and change that. I've got a hook that will automatically load direnv functions when it changes into a folder if it finds them. More on that in the later lecture. It sets the default browser, which again is for Jupyter and things like that. So it's all set up there. Most users won't have to touch this. More experienced users can customize it and set it up how they wish. As I say, I've got sort of defaults which are set to my typical working environments that I use at home and at work. So in theory, everything that I write should work with this. People can then add their own extensions if they are more sort of user power users and so on. In the next lecture, we're now going to look at the UV tool. So this is going to be a bit more in depth as we go through, and we will start that next.